Okay, so let's unpack this really fascinating piece of strategy documentation we have here. We're doing a deep dive into the Ushkee Network's philosophy of growth. It's specifically from their episode 5, which they titled Building Forward with Intention.
And it's more than just a title, right? It's a compelling blueprint for an entity that is fundamentally rejecting the modern obsession with speed.
Yeah, with velocity.
Exactly. They are actively pushing back on this, this core assumption that faster growth is automatically better growth or even safe growth.
Well, that's the real challenge we're tackling today, isn't it? In a world where every company is judged on these huge quarterly surges and exponential curves,
Yeah.
how does an organization, and we should be clear, Ushkee's building digital infrastructure, community tools, how does it define progress when it just says no to all that? I mean, no to the speed, the hype, the forced milestones. It feels almost revolutionary.
And that's our mission for you today. We want to really get into what their objective is based on this material to understand the how and the why behind Ushkee's intentional and controlled growth. And crucially, we're going to define what moving forward actually means to them when you strip away all the usual stuff. The pressure, the false promises.
Right, because whenever you see something developing, something with potential, the natural question is always, where's it going?
And how fast?
And how fast is it getting there? Exactly. This deep dive is really about answering that question by showing that the lack of rush is the strategy.
So to start, we really have to get into their rejection of breakneck speed. They call it their philosophy of controlled growth.
The anti-hype stance. This is where it all pivots. The source material is so direct about this. Ushkee is explicitly not built to grow as fast as possible.
Right. It's built to grow intentionally. That distinction might sound small, but it has these massive operational consequences.
It's everything.
It's the foundation of their entire identity. The document, it clearly lays out the negative consequences of uncontrolled growth. What happens when speed is your only metric. They say if you grow too fast, you instantly create confusion. People just don't get the mission anymore. You also generate all this unnecessary pressure on the people building things. And critically, you build resistance.
That pressure point is so key. I mean, we've all seen projects collapse because they promised too much too soon. They exhaust their teams and just alienate their community with constantly shifting priorities. So if they aren't racing, how do they keep moving? How do they maintain healthy momentum?
Well, they outline a very specific, very deliberate mechanism for progress. It's designed around continuous calibration, not big, flashy achievements.
The feedback loop.
A perpetual feedback loop, yeah. And it's powered by reality.
Okay, let's break that down. What are the specific parts of that loop they use to, get from an idea to something real?
So they maintain momentum with 4 actions. First, they test ideas internally. Second, they watch how people respond to those early tests. Third, and this is important, they learn from real activity, not from theory, not from simulations. And fourth, they adjust when needed.
That idea of learning from real activity is so interesting. For you listening, what does real activity actually mean here? Are we just talking about user numbers?
No, not at all. The source implies it's about verifiable quality engagement. So real activity in this context means things like specific user interactions with their tools or, measurable community contributions like documentation, open source code, and even participation in the real world local events they organize. It's stuff you can see and touch, not just a number on a chart.
I can see how that mechanism, test, watch, learn, adjust, it keeps things incredibly grounded. But it also sounds, slow. I mean, if growth is based on watching real activity, which takes time, how do they deal with the market impatience that kills so many long-term projects? Doesn't that just invite people to say they're not doing anything?
And that's where the intentionality comes in. They basically accept that external impatience because they believe the alternative, which is rushing, is just a strategic disaster. For them, the biggest risk isn't moving too slowly. It's moving quickly based on bad assumptions. They'd rather spend 6 months watching and learning to make sure that foundation is solid than launch too early and have to rebuild everything, because that creates massive resistance.
Which connects directly to their leadership structure. Let's get into that. Section 2, founder-led direction and clarity.
Right. The document's very upfront about this. Ushkee is currently founder-led. And in any organization, that structure, it instantly brings up questions about control, centralization.
Exactly. When you reject external metrics and speed, you might assume there's no urgency. If the founder is the one making the final call, how do we know it isn't just control for its own sake? Or, even worse, a bottleneck that just stalls everything?
And the strategy doc, It addresses this head-on by reframing what that leadership role is all about. It emphasizes that the structure isn't about control. It's about decision-making based on three foundational commitments. And these all prioritize long-term stability and health.
Okay, what are those three commitments?
1, long-term thinking. Decisions are made through a lens of like decades, not months. 2, real-world awareness, which connects right back to learning from real activity. They have to stay grounded. And 3, a sense of responsibility for the direction of the entire ecosystem.
That idea of responsibility, it changes the role from just a controller to more of a guardian of the vision. It's about protecting that initial integrity until the ecosystem is strong enough to stand on its own. So what's the immediate goal of having this structure right now?
The main priority is protecting clarity. They say it explicitly, clarity over everything else while things are being built. Because if the foundation is confusing, then everything you build on top of it is just going to fail. This clarity makes sure that when people join or participate, they know exactly what they're getting into.
Clarity before complexity. It makes sense. Scaling too fast always creates a mess nobody can navigate, and it just pushes people away. And the source material does say the structure is expected to evolve, right? This isn't permanent.
Oh, absolutely. The founder-led model is temporary. It's seen as necessary only during this intense building phase where the big decisions about culture and infrastructure are being made, but they really underline that direction and clarity have to be absolute before they introduce, broader governance or distributed leadership. You can't distribute a direction if the direction itself is muddy.
That makes a lot of sense. That whole progression, tying clarity to the structure, is a direct result of rejecting all that external pressure. If you're forced to move fast, clarity is always the first thing to go.
Which brings us perfectly to section 3, the pace. How do they actually move forward when they've thrown out the entire corporate playbook?
Yeah, the strategy here is incredibly bold. They are just completely rejecting traditional deadlines. The document says, and this is a direct point, there is no finish line being rushed toward. No deadlines, no countdowns, and no forced milestones. That patience is intentional. It's non-negotiable.
So for anyone listening who's used to, performance reviews and quarterly targets, the question is, what drives growth then? If you don't have those motivators, how does progress happen?
It's all driven by internal consistency and external reality. They list 3 key drivers of growth: consistent activity, real participation, and visible motion. If those 3 things are there, they're growing. If not, they pause.
And this is the pivotal shift in thinking. Forward progress is measured by motion, not by announcements. They prioritize what's observably real over future hype. They only introduce things when they're actually ready, after they've gone through that test, watch, learn cycle. And that approach, it just eliminates the risk of that resistance that comes from hyping things up too early.
Okay, let's talk more about that word motion. If they aren't measuring traditional things like market cap or user counts by a certain date, what tangible actions actually count as moving forward? What does success look like here?
The strategy documentation gives us 4 concrete actions. These are the measurements that really matter to them.
And they are?
First, expanding what already works. So focusing energy on proven successes instead of chasing every new shiny idea. Second, strengthening community connections, really investing in the quality of those relationships. Third is creating more real-world activity, tying the network back to tangible experiences, reinforcing that metric we talked about. And fourth, deepening culture and identity.
The last point, deepening culture and identity. That's fascinating because it's a choice that actively slows down user growth. I mean, any traditional company would prioritize user count over some fuzzy idea of cultural identity every single time. Why do they do that?
Because this strategy sees culture as the underlying infrastructure. If the culture is deep and clear and resilient, it can withstand shocks later. It can handle rapid growth when it finally comes. But if the culture is shallow, any rapid expansion will just break the social contract. So by prioritizing foundational strength like expanding what works and deepening culture, they're building for the long term. They're sacrificing short-term spectacle.
It's like building a massive structure, but the quality control dictates the schedule, not some arbitrary timeline. It's saying the second floor only goes up when the first floor is perfectly engineered.
Precisely. They are betting that the long-term cost of rebuilding a broken culture is way higher than the short-term benefit of announcing fast growth.
Which brings us to our last section. What does this all mean for the participant? For you, listening? We've analyzed the strategy, but what does this intentional pace give you in practical terms if you're involved with Ushkee?
I think what's most freeing is that it removes the anxiety that defines so much of digital life today. Since the organization isn't creating artificial urgency, you, as a participant, are free from that constant
The
pressure.
freedom from FOMO, the fear of missing out. You don't have to be on high alert all the time, waiting for the next big thing.
That's the key psychological benefit. Because of this structure, you don't need to constantly chase updates. You don't need to speculate endlessly about what's coming. You certainly don't need to predict what's next or worry about some sudden disruptive change. The organization is committed to clarity. So when something is ready, it'll just be introduced. Simply, directly, and you can absorb it at your own pace.
It completely changes the psychological contract. It makes participating so much less stressful,
Totally.
more
Uh-huh.
sustainable. So if the organization is moving forward based on its own metric of motion, what's the participant's role here?
Your role is simply to stay connected and to move at a pace that feels right for you. There's no expectation of immediate adoption or, high pressure engagement. The final point from the source is that reassurance, growth will happen. It just won't be rushed. You can trust the process because the process is designed for durability, not speed.
That is just a profound commitment to strategic patience.
Hmm.
The core message is so clear. Controlled growth keeps things healthy, it avoids pressure, and it simplifies the whole process for everyone, from the founder all the way down to the newest person joining.
Right. If we synthesize this whole deep dive, the key differentiator is that Ushkee grows step by step, grounded in reality. And that commitment eliminates all the usual side effects of scaling too fast. There's no confusion, no overcomplication, and no resistance from failed promises. It's a powerful argument that the quality and consistency of growth matters so much more than its speed.
So what does this all mean for us outside of this specific network? I mean, if you prioritize consistency and clarity and learning from real activity over just speed and arbitrary deadlines, how might other organizations benefit from that? Startups looking for funding, corporations with legacy issues, even community groups. Could they benefit from adopting this core principle of motion over announcements? It raises a really important question about whether our relentless pursuit of speed is actually stopping us from building things that last.
Something for you to consider as you define your own path forward, whether you're building a network or just, building your next project.